You done now?
Broadcasting live from Houston, Texas, and around the world. TV host, best-selling author, and radio personality Brad Gilmore brings you a collection of conversations with stars from movies.
Mark Wahlberg.
Hey, how are you?
The legendary Mr. Christopher Lloyd. Christopher, how are we doing?
I'm doing good. Great introduction.
Television.
Jimmy Fallon joins us this morning. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend?
Good morning. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me. I appreciate this, bud.
Kelly Ripa.
Brad, thank you for having me.
Comedy.
Jay Leno joins us. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, Brad, what's going on?
Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias.
Good morning.
Music.
Lola Monroe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The legendary frontman of AC/DC, Brian Johnson, joins us right now. Brian, how you doing?
Good morning, Brad. What looking at you, give me funny, lad.
Grammy Award winner Maya joins us.
How are you?
And more. This is The Collection. Now your host, The Boat, Brad Gilmore.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Collection. My name is The Boat, Brad Gilmore. I want to really thank you for joining us on the show again today. We have a great interview. This is one that I am very excited about because a lot of the people, almost everybody who's on this show, if not everybody, no, everybody. Why would I say almost everybody? Everybody's on the show I'm a fan of, but there are certain people that I am like mega fans of and have followed their work. And our guest today is one of them. His name is Brad Meltzer. Other than having a great first name, my voice is still out from earlier in the week. Other than having a great first name, Brad Meltzer is the New York Times best-selling author of books like The Lincoln Conspiracy, The Original Conspiracy. He was the host of the very popular history reality show Decoded, where they look into the different conspiracies of all time and try to see exactly what really happened and kind of educate the audience on them. And his new book is called The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Winston Churchill. And here's the thing about this book, guys. It is definitely a read. You have to be committed to it. It's about, it's actually not as long as I thought. It's about 335 pages, give or take, all said and done. And it is fascinating. For those of you who are probably big World War II buffs, you already know about a lot of this story. But if you are not, this is definitely one to pick up, man, because what Brad tells you about is Hitler had this plot to try to kill the three biggest world leaders at the time, other than himself, obviously, and his biggest enemies, Joseph Stalin of Russia, Winston Churchill of Great Britain, and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt of the United States of America. And they, all three of them, had this secret meeting in Tehran, Iran. And Brad's going to go into it and talk to you about it because it is such a fascinating story. If you're a history lover, you will be enthralled by what you read in this book and what you hear in this interview. And then Brad Meltzer and I get into my favorite conspiracy. Well, my second favorite. I love the JFK stuff. I didn't want to get into that with him right now. We're going to, hopefully I'll have some cool guests later this year for the 60th anniversary. But there's this book called Into the Blast. It's the true story of D.B. Cooper. And D.B. Cooper, for those you don't know, is the most famous unsolved skyway jacking in history. So this guy got on a plane, hijacked it for ransom of a certain amount of money, and then he jumped off into the night with a parachute and never heard from again. This book discusses who the most likely suspect is in the D.B. Cooper realm. And it is, of course, Kenny Christensen. And if you haven't read this book, this is one to go watch out. And Brad did a show about this on Decoded. And they went to Kenny Christensen's house and they discovered something in the house that no one had ever seen before. And it really makes you think, could he have been D.B. Cooper? And we talk about that here on the show. And Brad tells us something that we didn't see on television for Decoded. So without further ado, here's my interview with the incomparable, the highly intelligent, and the well-researched author of The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. Here's Brad Meltzer. And welcome back to the show. We said we are going to have a special guest. He's got a brand new book out that I'm very excited about. It's called The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. The author himself is with us, Brad Meltzer. Brad, how you doing?
Good to be back, ma'am.
Now, I don't know. Can we still say Happy New Year, or are we too late? I mean, we're like 9 days.
I don't know. I'm in. I feel like you get 2 weeks.
2 weeks is a good cutoff, but you can't Happy New Year in February.
No, then you're just inappropriate.
Yeah, it's a little rude. It's really a little rude, man. But look, we're excited,
especially because then you're not saying Happy Valentine's Day, and everyone hates you for that.
Exactly. You know, you can't win in any way you do it, Brad. But look, we're talking about the new book, The Nazi Conspiracy. This is a fascinating read for anyone who doesn't know. Give them a little bit, just kind of give them the cliff notes of what the story is exactly about. It's about kind of a secret meeting that was planned between three world leaders.
Yeah, it's not just a secret meeting, but it's a triple assassination. They're planning to kill Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt at the height of World War II. Nazis are planning a triple assassination. And what's happening is this is the first moment in 1943 in World War II that the big three, Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt, are going to meet face to face. They're getting together to plan Normandy, the great invasion that we all know. They're in Tehran, Iran, of all places, because that's where Stalin wants to meet. He thinks that the desert there will provide secrecy and they have better security there. And this is what happens. So FDR flies to Tehran. Again, this is all true. None of it's made up. And the great motorcade of the president is going through the center of the city, and everyone's craning their necks and waving, and the president's waving back from the motorcade. But what no one knows is that's not the president at all. It's actually a Secret Service agent acting as a decoy. The real FDR is across the city, ducked down and hiding in the back of a beat-up sedan because they're worried that the Nazis are going to murder him at that moment. And I just ruined chapter 1 of the Nazi conspiracy for you. But that's chapter 1. And Josh mentioned, my co-writer and I, we started with that, and we're like, we need to tell this story. Why is Roosevelt hiding? Who's trying to kill him? And how did this all happen? What were they planning?
I mean, it's an incredible story. And like you said, based on all these things that really happened. And I guess to the average person who doesn't dive deep into some of these historical stories that aren't told us so often, you don't even realize the great lengths that they have to go to protect these world leaders, especially FDR at the time, at the height of the Nazi regime in World War II. I'm sure he was public enemy number 1 for Hitler and gang.
Oh, listen, and both sides, including our side, were using assassinations to win the war. Admiral Yamamoto is the Japanese admiral who's the mastermind behind Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And the Secret Service and everyone else that comes with the intelligence report that they have a shot to kill Yamamoto. They figure out where he's going to be flying one day. And they ask FDR, do you want to kill him? And the quote that FDR says back is very simple: get Yamamoto. And they kill Admiral Yamamoto, the mastermind of Pearl Harbor. Adolf Hitler, they go after multiple times. They try and kill him in the Alps. They try and kill him on a train. And so when the Nazis had a chance to take out the big three leaders, it was the best thing that they had when they knew and figured out where they were all going to be at the same time. It's the best thing anyone has in a fight, which is an opportunity and a chance to take them all out at once. And the crazy part of the story are these Nazis that they bring in to do it. It's one of my favorite parts, Brad, is they have a guy, and I've never heard of this guy. I'm sure you haven't heard of him either, a guy named Otto Skorzeny. And Otto Skorzeny is this Nazi who gets called to Hitler's headquarters. And Hitler brings together all of his top special operations troops. He wants to find who the best one is. And he puts them shoulder to shoulder in the Wolf's Lair in his secret headquarters. And he asks them one question: what do you think of Italy? And they all give these kind of butt-kissing answers saying, oh, we love Italy. We stand strong with them. They're on our side. And Otto Skorzeny in that moment takes a gamble. And he basically gives this answer. He says, I am from Austria, my Fuhrer, because he knows that Adolf Hitler is from Austria. And he's banking on the fact that a real Austrian hates Italy because during World War I, Italy took a key piece of Austria and never gave it back. And Adolf Hitler, in this moment, again, it all happened, turns to this Nazi, Otto Skorzeny. He's like, you're my guy. and he sends him on a top secret mission. I won't ruin this part of the book, but it's such a crazy mission. Nazis falling from the sky. You're not going to believe when you see it. It's so crazy. I told my editor, we need to put a photograph, an actual picture in the book to show people that this really happened. Otherwise, they won't believe it. And that's what we did. So when you get to that chapter in the Nazi conspiracy, you're going to see Otto Skorzeny and what he did that day. It's the greatest Nazi story you've never heard of.
So that's where I wanted to go with you. You a lot of the times in books that you've written before, whether it be the Lincoln Conspiracy or others, or even your show, which I was such a massive fan of, Decoded on the History Channel, you find these stories that should be on everybody's radar, but most people are unaware of these. What are the research methods that go into something like writing the Nazi conspiracy? Like, how much research are you buried in?
Yeah, like when we do a book like the Lincoln Conspiracy about the plot to kill Abraham Lincoln, or the first conspiracy about the plot to kill George Washington, you have the National Archives, you have the New York Historical Society records, you have, basic, first account details there. With the Nazi conspiracy, this is the first book where we're trying to figure out what the Nazis knew, what the Soviets knew. So we suddenly had to bring in researchers who spoke German and who spoke Russian. And it was a brand new research phase for Josh and I. And it was really hard to do because there's imperfect information out there. And one of the things that we found, the way that the Nazis kept secret information, they used to transport it on their intelligence, their top intelligence, on brown sheets, they would call them. And they were named after the fact they were printed on dark brown paper. And you locked them up. They had special ways to lock them up. After a month, they had to be destroyed so no one would find them. They went to just the top Nazis. But the head of propaganda for the Nazis, Joseph Goebbels, used to keep extensive diaries. And he was so stupid, he actually wrote down what he read in the brown sheets. So that's how we found out some of the things we know today. So we found out that the Nazis, and this was chilling to me, they had actually cracked our international cables, and they knew what FDR and Winston Churchill were sending back to each other. So we all think of World War II being like, oh, we won the war, we punched the Nazis in the jaw, and we won the day. But when you do this research, you realize that it wasn't a foregone conclusion that we were going to win. It could have just as easily gone the other way, especially if this plot to kill the big three took place.
You talk about propaganda and propagandists, and it's something that, in many ways, if not even more, we're dealing with today with the spread of misinformation. And from however you want to look at it, we are a very well misinformed, informed electorate and population in the U.S. and I guess abroad because of social media, and it's so hard to tell if something's real or fake. What role do you think propaganda still plays in government agencies today?
Listen, one of the things we found was, and I can't believe this is true, but it's true, is we always kind of like say, oh, the Nazis are back here. We see what Kanye does. We see Charlottesville, and we kind of wring our hands and say, I can't believe this is happening in the United States. But we found a rally in World War II that took place in all places. And again, perfect place to talk about it was in Madison Square Garden in New York City. And this 20,000 Nazis are in Madison Square Garden, not watching a Knicks game, but they're cheering. There's a big picture of George Washington on a banner covered in swastikas. The first speaker of the night says that if George Washington was alive today, that he would be friends with Adolf Hitler. And we forget that the Holocaust doesn't start with death camps. It starts with rallies and propaganda and book bans, exactly what you're talking about. And then we tell stories about, you have a group of people who are telling hateful stories about some marginalized group. It could be the Jewish people in this case. It could be the Black community, the gay community, the immigrant community, pick your community, whatever it is. But what the lesson is of the Holocaust is when you see Nazis doing that, you got to stand up and say no. We didn't just write the Nazi conspiracy to entertain you or inform you. We also wrote it to warn you that you better use your voice or else you're going to relive history again, because it happens right here over and over. Just like Kanye shot his big mouth off, Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh used to use their celebrity to say crap about the Jews all the time. And this stuff happens over and over until good people stand strong and say enough.
Yeah, and you hit on something with book banning. And in book burning, we've all read Fahrenheit 454, and even going to you had issues, I think, with a couple of your books being banned. Is that correct?
It's unbelievable. Our book last year, I Am Rosa Parks and I Am Martin Luther King Jr., got banned in a school district out in York, Pennsylvania. We had to fight against the ban and stand against the school board. And these are stories of Dr. King and Rosa Parks. But that's how much it happens. We were able to fight it and get it overturned thanks to the help of the students there. But here we are in 2023, and we're still fighting Nazis.
Yeah, it is quite shocking. And, I guess I'm reminded of, because, for people who don't know, the Nazis used to have these big book burnings. I'm even reminded of the Last Crusade in Indiana Jones, where they're about to burn the what was it? The Holocaust, not the, what were they about to burn? They're about to burn the Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail novel, or with all the Sean Connery's
And don't call
scribbles.
me Junior.
Don't, Junior? Yeah, we don't want any of that from Sean Connery. But you really don't realize those who control, if you control books and you can get rid of them, you can control a population because they're just so uninformed about things like Dr. King or Rosa Parks. And it's such an authoritarian thing to do. And I don't know why do people fall behind these figures like an Adolf Hitler or any authoritarian regime even to this day? Is it the cult of personality is so strong that they are just so attracted to it? It's almost blinding?
There's a recipe for authoritarianism and why people follow them. And the recipe you see, whether it's Adolf Hitler or anything else, is you see a group of people that the economic, the economy of their city or of their country, pick wherever you want, is going sideways. People have lost their jobs. They don't have the way of life they used to have. And then you mix in an authority figure who plays on those fears. And they start saying those people are the cause for this happening. That's what Hitler did with the Jews. Those people are the reason you in Germany, why your country is not as great as it used to be. And when you see those words, those people, that's a code. And that's the recipe for authoritarianism. So, listen, everyone loves a strong leader, but you can't be a sucker and fall for someone who's playing on your fears. And there's a fine line between following someone who's strong and being manipulated by them. And you'll see over and over again what these authoritarians do, what these quote unquote strong leaders do, is they immediately act like a bully and they point out a group and they tell you that group's going to be the end of your life the way you know it. And that's a scary thought to a lot of people. And you just got to not fall for it. Don't fall. Hitler made huge miscalculations in the war. And two of the biggest ones he made is, one of them was he thought that Russia was going to fall really quickly. He didn't realize the Russians were going to be able to, take them on and never give up. They will never give up. Never, ever. And the other one he made is, we didn't want to fight the Nazis. We tell the story of punching the Nazis in the jaw. We don't want to fight the Nazis. We don't want to be in World War II. After World War I, we lost so many young men. Mm-hmm. No one wanted to be in another war. After the stock market crash, we didn't want another fight. FDR is elected to save the country from ruin. And as the Nazis are rising, we're staying out of it. We were isolationists. It's not until Pearl Harbor happens that we say, hey, let's fight. And we don't even want to fight the Nazis. We're just going to fight Japan. But Adolf Hitler slaps his knee and they tell him, sir, don't pick a fight with the United States. Let them just fight with Japan. We can fight our own fight with the Soviets. And Adolf Hitler says a strong leader attacks. They don't wait to be attacked. And his big ego and thinking that he's got the biggest one in the room is what causes him to attack and declare war on the United States. And that's when Winston Churchill remembers this one quote about the United States. And it goes like this. He says that the United States is like a gigantic boiler. And once you light a fire under it, there's no limit to the power it will produce. And Churchill's absolutely right about that. And so being a big shot, Hitler feels all strong and mighty, but you miscalculate and it's your downfall.
I mean, it's an incredible story. You can read all about it in The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. Brad Meltzer joins us right now. Brad, I know you have a lot to do. You got a lot of interviews. I got one more thing for you, unrelated to this current book, but I can't recommend this enough. But going to your show, Decoded, I love the show so much. I've seen every episode probably multiple times at this point. And the one that sticks out to me the most is the episode you all did about D.B. Cooper. And when I was actually looking at my bookshelf today, I remembered that I had purchased, I don't know if you can see this, but I purchased this book, which was called Into the Blast. It was called The True Story of D.B. Cooper. And it tells the story of Kenny Christensen, who some people pointed to as being the real D.B. Cooper. It was something that your episode particularly focused in on his story. And I'm very convinced that he's probably a very likely candidate How do you feel now, all these years later, about D.B. Cooper? Is Kenny Christensen the guy? Because I remember y'all even found that little hatch in his old house.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment, because I got to give you the backstory, because this is what you didn't see on TV. So we were, this is a show we did on the History Channel.
Mhm.
We're searching for DB Cooper, and listen, you got to set up on these shows. You got to set up your interviews. You know who you're going to talk to. It's pretty much planned out, and then there's this investigative part where you don't know what you're going to really find. And so we obviously, again, the author of that book contacted us before that book came out, and we obviously worked hand in hand with him on the Kenny Christensen part. And obviously, I still, think it's, as you just said, you said it perfectly, like certainly one of the top suspects out there. But what you didn't know, and no one knew and couldn't see, is when we were filming that episode, we're out in Portland, Oregon, obviously on the West Coast. I was in Florida, where I live, on the East Coast. And I knew the crew was going out there, like, we're going to go check out this place where he lived, and we're going to see what's happening. And they said to me, I don't know if we're going to find anything. So you don't need to be on the phone. Just, stand by and we'll be fine. And a couple hours later, now it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night on the East Coast, because they're filming obviously earlier there. And my phone rings really late. And I'm like, uh-oh. And I pick up the phone, and they're like, Brad, we found something. I'm like, oh my gosh, what'd you find? And they found that hatch. We didn't know when we went into that place what we were going to find. And there's a hatch in the ceiling that has a little place that can perfectly store a hiding spot for a suitcase. And that was one of those moments that wasn't part of any script. It wasn't part of the book that you have that you just held up. It was just a brand new piece of information. And it was one of those ones that just blew us away. I'm going to, in fact, see Scott, who's from Decoded. I'm going to see him in 2 nights out in Frederick, Maryland, for our book event there. But that episode in particular was one of our favorites to work on, because that story of DB Cooper jumping out of a plane, the greatest plane hijacking that has been unsolved through all history, is still one of the great mysteries of history.
Yeah, it's incredible. And when y'all found that hatch, I remember watching on television going, wow, look at that. And this is why the show was so great. And I love that story of D.B. Cooper. And maybe it's Kenny Christensen, we'll never know, probably. But I really enjoyed the show, and I enjoy.
And listen, that's what these books are. These books are me. When Dakota went off the air, we did 2 great seasons and then some specials. But I realized I love telling these stories. And so the first conspiracy, the Lincoln conspiracy, the Nazi conspiracy, it's just me doing Decoded just in book form. So I love the fact that so many people who love the History Channel show come to the books and get to see our new investigation with obviously even more research, even more details, and the craziest Nazi stories you're ever going to see in your life.
Well, I can't recommend it enough, Brad. Thanks for taking the time. Again, it's The Nazi Conspiracy, The Secret to Kill, Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. Brad Meltzer's with us. Brad, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, brother Brad. Much appreciated.
All right, take care.
Hurry up, tape running out.